I wanted everybody to understand what this baseline is. It's an invisible line upon which all the text sits. So every line of text has a baseline. And we use that baseline for a lot of controls when it comes to formatting text. So we have to understand that it is there, though we don't see it, it is there, and it is holding our text to that line, a nice straight line like that. X height is going to change according to font, but don't worry about that. It's still going to fit within the line. You'll see some differences as we're working here in this document. What we're going to do is we're going to start looking at the text formatting controls that we will see in the control panel once we have the type tool selected. So the type tool is with the capital letter T. It's got a little serif on it. It's very cute. But that is our type tool. And there's only two type tools in InDesign, type and type on a path. Type on a path is fun, but we're not there yet. We're just working with the type tool. And the type tool allows you to make a text frame, to highlight text, to type where the blinking insertion point is. Allows you to type, it allows you to highlight the type, it allows you to edit type, and it allows you to add type. You can also place Word files or rich text format files, RTFs, in here. You can copy and paste text in here as well, but you're going to use the type tool to do all of those things. Excuse me. Let's go ahead and use the type tool to select the line I love text. Now you're seeing some little blue things at the end of each line. Looks like a paragraph return. That's essential to understand. How I'm showing that to you is I have something called hidden characters turned on. We'll be doing a little bit of that tonight too, but let me show you where it is just so you know where to find it or how you can turn it on and off yourself. One place you can find it is near the bottom of the type pull-down menu. It's actually the very last choice. So if yours says show hidden characters, you want to select it and it will reveal the spaces between, tabs, hard returns at the end of the sentence or the line. It reveals all the formatting icons that it can that don't print, but they help you when you're writing or editing things. So that's one place you can find it. Another place you can find it is when you have the two-column toolbar like I have here. There is a little pop-out menu. This is in 2020. The Adobe CC 2020 has this little button down here. Earlier versions like 2019 and before that had the little button right here. It's a little pop-out view menu. So the little pop-out view menu has some of the most often chosen settings for viewing. So we could see the frame edges, we could see the rulers. This is how we would bring up the rulers and or make them go away. We can show our guides or hide them. We can do that here. And then at the very bottom, we have hidden characters. Now, again, mine are on already, so I'm not going to select that, but just so you know where you can find it to turn it on and off. The other advantage of the two-column toolbar are the last two buttons at the bottom. One is normal viewing of your document, so you see all those hidden characters, you see the guidelines, you see the edges of the frames. But right to the right of it is another pop-out menu, but you don't have to pop anything out. Just click on it and it makes all of those hidden things go away. So you can look at your document without the guides and the hidden characters, all that stuff just kind of goes away temporarily. This is what we call the preview, or the view of how it will look when it prints. So I can go back to my normal view with all my edges and stuff showing just by clicking between these two squares. Makes it nice and easy. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program here. Let's talk about formatting type. So we have some text selected. We have the type tool active in the toolbar. And then across the top in the control panel, we get a whole bunch of formatting options for text. One would be character formatting, and that is symbolized by this letter A that is in the upper left corner of the control panel. So when the A has the gray square around it, we are seeing character formatting options. Everything here has to do with the characters you currently have selected. So anything we choose in the character formatting options area only applies itself to the characters that are currently selected. That's kind of a key thing for us to remember because we're going to add on to that knowledge. We're going to add on to that as we go forward. So character formatting options only apply to the currently selected characters that you have on your screen. The paragraph formatting options appear when you click on the little paragraph return symbol. In case you're playing Trivial Pursuit, that's called a pilcrow. When you click on the little paragraph return symbol, our options change to paragraph formatting options. Well, what's the difference? The difference is these formatting options control or are applied to the entire paragraph all the way up to a hard return. The formatting ends at the hard return, that paragraph symbol. So paragraph formatting options apply to the entire paragraph. It looks the same throughout the paragraph. Even if the paragraph is just one word like Wednesday, there's a paragraph return, formatting ends right there. So we can switch back and forth between those two rather easily. If you have a really large screen like I do, you'll notice that at some point character formatting ends and paragraph formatting begins. Unfortunately, it can't fit all of paragraph formatting, but it does have quite a few of the options up there. I'm going to start with character formatting. So let's make sure that the gray square is around the A. If it's around the paragraph return, then click on the A and it will move up to that character formatting. So character formatting options, here we go. We can do quite a bit here. We can choose a font. That's the very first thing. Now there's a whole lot going on here. There's a pop-out menu to the right of the word Helvetica. In that pop-out menu, there's a very long menu with a scroll bar, seriously long here. It's going to have different fonts from mine, but these are all the fonts that are on your system, on your machine, that are available to you. At the top, we'll see fonts that I've recently used. So I use Avenir very often. I use Open Sans quite a bit. Myriad Pro comes with all of the Adobe programs, so I use that quite a bit. So there's some that I've used recently or are still open and available for me to use. Below that, there's a little divider line. There's some silly things that my computer wants me to know exist, like Apple emojis. I'm on a Mac, so they're going to throw in whatever they want there. Miltonian tattoo. Oh, that sounds great. Okay, well, let's skip that. Let's get down to the good stuff. This is an alphabetical list of all the fonts that I have on my machine. I have quite a few. I'm in desktop publishing, in magazines. I have collected. I have done quite a bit, but I can never have enough. I always want more. Fonts come in packages sometimes. Fonts are for sale by many people, many foundries. But there are also free fonts that some are good and some are not so good. How do you know the difference? Well, one thing I can say is, as we're looking at my list here, there's some symbols on the far right. A TT for true type. That is the type of font that was developed on the PC side of things. It was developed for the PC, by this PC. It only worked on the PC for a very long time. Eventually, Apple changed or got the formatting to be the same. Where you see a little A, that is an Adobe font. Adobe was a font foundry originally. They have quite a number of fonts available for people. The need to take fonts and make them digital rather than metal cast type came along, and Adobe came up with Illustrator. So that is where that started. Photoshop came second. Sorry to break the news to you. And then InDesign is their, secret love child. Anyway, an Adobe font only worked on a Mac for a very long time. And what we would see on the Mac, say Helvetica or Times New Roman, was not the same thing on the PC. The PC could have the same font, but it was named something different. Like Arial is supposedly the same as Helvetica, but it was developed on the PC side, so it was called Arial. It's actually developed for web use. So then there's this third symbol here, this O, and O is a symbol representing an open typeface. This has 5 family members or styles that are associated with it. And TrueType and Adobe fonts can also have those styles. However, OpenType fonts were developed to work on the PC and the Mac the same way. They have the same name, they look the same, they print the same. So it's a very nice combination. They were developed for both platforms at the same time. The additional styles and things are something that we definitely need to look for in the professional realm, because there is no italic button and there is no bold button in any of the professional design programs, including InDesign. So what does that mean? Well, italic in Word, you're asking the computer to just guess and bend the letters at whatever angle it sees fit to do. And although that might look okay on your screen, there's no guarantee it's going to print the way you're seeing it, because it's not a true font. Adding the bold button similarly is asking the computer to just add some weight to the letters indiscriminately, and it may look bold on your screen, but it may not print that way, because it's creating a screen display, not a printable image. So what do designers, professionals do? We look for fonts that have styles or family members associated with them. So in this case, Calibri has a light, a regular, an italic, a bold, and a bold italic. And I have on this little sample text. It's called WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. I can see an example of each of those styles. So when we're working in a professional program, we're not only going to pick a font, just pick whatever you like that's on your system. Not only going to pick a font, we're going to pick a style, and that is right below the font name is the style, and it will pop out and list all of the styles available for this. So I could choose italic, and what does that mean? What does styles mean? What do family members mean? It means the same guy that created the original font, Calibri, also generated the italic version and the bold version himself or herself or themselves. They have it weighted and balanced to perfection. Everything's at the same angle, everything's at the same weight, nothing sticks out as a flaw or is too heavy or too light compared to some of the other letters. So we want robust fonts like that. If I show you some of these one-shot deals here, like Scriptina. Scriptina is pretty, but it has no family members. There's nothing to pop out here. And there are a lot of fonts like that, like the 3Dumb that I have here. There's just one style. There's nothing other than regular to choose from. Now, there you're not getting your money's worth. If you got it for free, great. But there might come a time that you need an italic to go with this, or you might need a bold to go with this. And what I can tell you is if you didn't pick a font that had those styles built into it or ready to go with it, find another font. There are millions of them out there, and there's slight differences between them. If you look really hard, you'll be able to find something that fits what you're working with, or could replace what you're working with. A font site that I recommend is called fontsquirrel.com. Free fonts. They're robust fonts. They have family members, most of them. They have all the punctuation, the numbers, capital and lowercase. Some fonts only come with uppercase. Some fonts only come with lowercase. Some come with no punctuation or numbers. You got to be really picky and pay attention to what you're getting, especially when you're paying for it. Once you've paid for it, it's yours. You can use it however you want. And then we will need to supply our fonts to our printer if we go that route and get it professionally printed. And that's a whole story that we'll talk about on session 5. Okay, so I need to put a real font in here. This looks silly. So I can scroll down my list here and just pick some fonts. If I still have the type selected, as I do with the type tool, and I go back into the font name and just click, it highlights the name of the font. And what I can do is I can use my down arrow key. I can use the up as well, but I can cycle through the fonts. Now it's going through that first list that was fonts I just recently used, and then it went to the Apple emojis, but now it's into my A for A fonts that start with A. And I can cycle through them until I find something I like, and I can see how it looks applied to my text. It's kind of a nice thing. Then if you find something and you go to the style and there's only regular, well, you have to make a call on that. Maybe this is a headline and you aren't going to need italic or bold. So then you'd be fine. So just pick a font to apply to it, and it is magically applied. You will not see anything that you don't already have on your system offered to you. It doesn't work that way. If you know the name of the font you want to apply, you can select the name that's in there, and I can get it back to Helvetica. By typing in Helvetica, it pops out everything with the word Helvetica in it, and then I just kind of pick from this. Way at the bottom, I scroll down a little bit. I've got a Helvetica regular. Did you know that there's a 4-hour video on just Helvetica? No, we're not going to watch that. I will not do that to people. That's a trauma waiting to happen. So it's very easy to pick a new font, pick a new style, and play with that all you want. You can go crazy with whatever you own. To the right of the font and the style, we have size. And now size of type is always measured in points. It's a very small amount. It's about the size of a pixel, if you can imagine a pixel. There are 72 points in an inch. So if we said 36-point type would be half an inch tall, because that's half a 72. So nobody should ever give you type measurements in inches, but if they do, just take it times 72 and you'll get the point measurement. On the right of the field for the size of the type, there's a pop-down menu which gives you a bunch of sizes. Now, these were the only sizes we could use when it was die-cast metal type that was hand set and put on a platen press. But we could do whatever we want. I mean, we could pick from this, to get started, and then we could just keep using the left side. There's an arrow up and an arrow down, 1 point at a time. We could go up to 300 if we wanted. Now, it's not going to fit in my box, so I'm going to undo that. But we can make type any size we want, because type is vector until you output. So type will scale and keep its sharp, crisp edge. You can make it whatever size you want. Usually, then, we follow up with leading. Leading is below the size. It looks like an A levitating over an A. Leading is the vertical space between the lines of text. So this space between I love text and Wednesday, that vertical space is called leading. Why is it called that? Well, back in the day when we hand set die-cast metal type, we needed some space for our descenders to come down past the baseline, but not interfere with the ascenders of the line below it. Now, I don't have that situation here, but what they did was they stuck chunks of lead between the lines of text to keep that from happening, for those descenders and ascenders to collide. So the term has just remained the same. So leading measures from the baseline of one line of text down to the baseline of the next line of text. And remember, that's the invisible line upon which the text sits. So vertical space. Now, industry standard, basically 120% of the size of the type, or in my little simplified world, 2 points more than the size of your type, at least. 2 points more than the size of your type. So if I have 38-point type, I want at least 40 points of leading. Now, I'm telling you all these rules and best practices, but we're going to break those rules with our exercise today. Just don't quote me on it, okay? Typically, we want 2 points more than the size of our text. So to the right of point size and leading, we have a bunch of T's. We have 2 columns and three rows. I did that backwards. We have 3 columns and 2 rows. There we go. That's better. So the T's are just appearance attributes that we can apply. So I'm going to start with the first column, top row. The 2 capital T's are all caps. And if you apply that, it turns to a gray button. It's telling you this has been applied. You can leave it there forever if you want. It will not cause you any trouble in the future. However, if you need to turn it off, very simple to do, you just click the button again. And it's no longer gray, it's no longer applied. Again, you can leave it on, it's not going to be a problem, but it stays on until or unless you turn it off. So I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to try the capital T's right below that. We call this small caps. So all the letters become capital letters. However, the letters that were capitalized originally are larger. So smaller caps for the lowercase letters, that's the result of small caps. And there are some fonts that are just like this anyway. It's got smaller caps for, it offers smaller caps for the lowercase letters than the uppercase letters. That stays on until or unless you turn it off. Let's switch around a little bit here. With my type tool, I'm going to highlight the copyright symbol that you see after the word options. For our next column of T's, we have superscript and subscript. Superscript goes up. I want you to look and see that the font is 22 points in size. And I'm going to apply the superscript option, the second button in from the left, middle column, but top row. What it does is it makes that copyright symbol smaller visibly, and it raises it up or pushes it up from the baseline so it's kind of where it's supposed to be. It's in that upper position. However, look at the size of the type. That did not change. It's just this appearance attribute of being smaller and pushed up from the baseline that stays in place and goes with your text. The copyright symbol is a glyph, and there's a panel for glyphs. Sometimes I remember keyboard shortcuts for these things, but glyphs is the place to find something like a registration mark or a copyright symbol. So that would be under text as well, or type as well. All right, now I'm going to highlight the H2O. I'm going to highlight the 2 in H2O. And here I'm going to use subscript. So superscript went up like Superman flying in the air. Subscript goes down like a submarine under the water. Makes the 2 smaller, keeps the point size the same, makes the 2 smaller, and pushes it down below the baseline. So a lot's happening in one little click. And that stays on forever until or unless you turn it off. And it's no problem to leave it on. What about the final one there? Let's highlight the wonderful world of Disney here. The final column of T's, we have underline. Underline stays on until or unless you turn it off. It does underline the spaces between things. Unless you want to go in there and highlight the spaces and turn it off, you certainly can do that. I don't recommend it. It's going to drive you a little batty. Just leave it underlined. I'm going to turn that off so that we can take a look at the final T, which is strike through. And we use strike through mainly in legal documents where you're not allowed to white things out. So you cross or strike through any of the wording that isn't appropriate any longer, and you add new wording. But nothing's ever removed. It's just stricken out, something like that. So I'm going to turn that one off as well. Okay. So we're having lots of fun so far. We're going to move over to the right some more. There's 2 little VAs, VA. Both of these options, kerning and tracking, deal with spaces between letters or words. So spaces, it's horizontal space, not vertical space. Horizontal space between letters or words. There's a very big difference between the two, though. I'm going to start with the lower VA that has the black highlight behind it. That is called tracking. Tracking affects everything you have selected. So I have Wonderful World of Disney and the registration mark selected. So when I add tracking or take tracking away, it equally distributes the space between everything I have selected. So it could be a word, it could be a phrase, it could be a paragraph. There's a button on the right that pops out, and I usually start with that to get an idea of where I want this to go. So I'm going to use a positive number here, really pushing it out there. It does add space between words as well, so that gets spaced out too. Then you could you could use your up and down arrows to go a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, and that seems to jump in the amount of 10 points at a time. You could also subtract space, try to make it take up less space. Now, this is a good trick when you need to get, like, the registration mark keeps returning to the next line. You want to get it to stay up there. You could try some kerning, some negative kerning to take space out. You can overdo this. I mean, it looks like one word now. You can overdo this. So I always say moderation. If you have to go past 25 or minus 25, then it's too much. You need to change the wording or make your column wider or do something else to make it fit. Maybe use some vertical scaling, which we're going to get to in a second here. So I'm going to put that back at 0, but kerning adjusts the spaces between everything you have selected. So the letters, the words, the whole line, the whole paragraph. Kerning is different. That's the VA at the top of the two. I'm going to click in the word Wednesday. I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut of Command or Control plus to zoom in here. Kerning is something that designers want to address as they're designing. Looking at this word Wednesday, are there any letters that seem farther apart than the other letters? Like, I'm looking at the S and the D. There's a bigger space there, definitely, than there is between the D and the A, or the E and the S. If there's a space big enough to drive a truck through, you need to kern it. Kerning deals with just a letter pair. So 2 letters, you see the blinking insertion point. It will not be offered to you if you have it highlighted more than 2 letters. It will not work. So what I do is I use the pop-out menu to get started. So I'm going to take out -10. Well, that didn't do much. -25. Okay, it's still not making me happy. -50. It's not bad. I could use my little down arrow or up arrow to get it in there a little tighter. Now I feel like the D and the N need some attention. Take that down a little bit, but you can also add space to make it a little roomier if you prefer. So I can do this forever, so I'm going to make myself stop. But if it's a headline especially, or the cover of something, some text on the cover, you want to address kerning and make sure that your words fit tightly together. They are perceived as one word, and you can't drive a truck through that space. So kerning is just letter pairs. You can use kerning and tracking in combination. That could also help make some space for you, or fill some space for you. I'm going to zoom back out here. Command or Control minus. See, I feel better about it already. It looks pretty good. All right, a couple more things here. I'm going to go to baseline shift first, and then I will go to the I will finalize this area by showing you the illegal tools, as I like to call them. So I'm just going to select with my type tool the W in the word world. Baseline shift is a command that, or a control, that allows us to push a letter up from the baseline or down below the baseline. It looks like a capital letter A with a smaller a levitating next to it. That is our baseline shift. So I can push it up 1 point at a time if I need to create some sort of magical effect there. Or I can bring it down below the baseline, and perhaps I'm going for more of a drop cap kind of effect, and I could do the same thing on the other capital letters. I don't remember how far I went down there, but I should be consistent. I shouldn't do strange things. Nope, it's 4. So that's something I could play around with. It's another design option for me. That is there, and you can apply it as many times as you want. The next time you go and select that letter, it will still have that readout for you of exactly where you put it, exactly how far up or down from the baseline it has become. I'm putting it back to 0. Oop, that's not what I meant to do. That's what I meant to do. Okay, so those are all legitimate tools that I recommend using. Now, there's some illegal tools. I call them that because what you're essentially doing is you're stretching and squishing the text in a manner it wasn't intended to be in. So we have horizontal scaling, which will make the text wider or narrower, but not any taller or shorter. And we have a vertical scale, which will make our text taller or shorter without affecting the width at all of the type. So again, this is something that you can do too much of. It's very easy to overdo it. Let's get that line, Wonderful World of Disney. I'm going to click 3 times to select the entire line. In my control panel up at the top, I'm looking for a T that has an arrow pointing up and down. That is the vertical scale, excuse me. Vertical scale has a pop-out menu. We can make it taller. We can make it shorter, but it doesn't get any wider or narrower. I'll put that back at 100%. Next to that, to the right of it, we have a T with an arrow going left and right. That is horizontal scale for type. This will make things wider or narrower without changing anything about the height. Now, as I said, you can overdo this. Now, let's say I added 50% horizontal scale, and then I go into my my kerning or tracking. I'll go with tracking here, and I put some more in there. I mean, you can't read that. No one can read that. There are street signs in my hometown that are just like this. They're scaled so close together that you have to be standing right under them to be able to read them. It's too much. What I would say is moderation. 25 for subtracting your tracking. Let's say 90%. So 10% horizontal scaling, if you can do it. If you can stick around that 10%, might not notice 15%, but we start to notice the text, the typeface looking different than it was intended. It's basically bastardizing the type. So if you need to get it that skinny, go find a really skinny type. There's millions of them out there. You'll find something just perfect for you. So moderation is key with that. The last illegal tool, I shudder to even show you. It's a false italic, and I do not recommend using this. So this font maybe doesn't have an italic. I can try this Skew, as it's called. I'm just going to use my up arrow key, and it makes my text skew. So this is an artificial italic. Now, it's making it work on your screen, but there's no guarantee it's going to print out the way you see it right now. A screen image is not the same thing as a printed image. So our PostScript file may not match this. So what can you do? Well, if you absolutely have to have this font and it does not have an italic and you're skewing the text, what I would recommend is as soon as you've done it and you've run a spell check on it and somebody has proofread it for you and it's perfectly ready, then switch to the selection tool, select the frame that the text is in, go to the type pull-down menu and choose create outlines. What is that going to do? It's going to make the text within that frame, and now it's not just the Wonderful World of Disney, it's everything that was in that frame, is now outlined as artwork. It's no longer editable as text. We can't change the font. We can't spell check it. We can't type in more letters just like it. None of that works anymore. It's now artwork with anchor points and line segments, that we can now reshape or remove or whatever it is we're looking to do. When you outline the font, when you create outlines in InDesign, you are essentially breaking the connection between the document and the font that you used. That is about the safest way I know of to use that Skew tool, but I really encourage you to stay away from it if you can. So that gave us a good look at the character formatting options in the control panel across the top. We're now going to switch over to the paragraph formatting options, and we're going to work with the paragraphs at the bottom of the page in the Faithful Farm Dog story. So in your control panel, make sure you click on the little paragraph return so your paragraph formatting options are here. Make sure you still have your type tool selected. A single click places your cursor in your text. We know that a double click selects a word. A triple click will select a line, but a quadruple click will select an entire paragraph. Doesn't stop there. If you do 5 clicks, I didn't do it fast enough. It selects the entire story, even text you can't see because it's not visible in your column. So just practice clicking every now and then and you'll see what I'm talking about. So with the paragraph formatting options, I don't actually have to select the entire paragraph. I can just place my cursor somewhere in the paragraph because all of this formatting is applied to the entire thing. Sometimes it just makes me feel better to know I have that paragraph selected before I start moving things around. Now that first paragraph is aligned to the left. What does that mean? Our first options are alignment options for how the text is displayed within the column in that paragraph of text. So we have align to the left, and align to the left means that if I drew a straight line on the left side, the text of every line would be touching it. That means that it's rag or loose on the right. So we might call that rag right as well. If I put my cursor in the second paragraph, but with some training, blah, 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 I can try a different alignment. I can try the centered alignment. Centered alignment means if I drew a straight line down the center, the lines of text touch that alignment, but it's then loose on both the left and the right side. So I end up with this ugly widow or orphan at the bottom, which no one likes. So I always tell people it's the designer's job to kill all the widows and orphans. And that's joking, of course. So how do we deal with that? Well, you've got centered type, so why don't we put in some well-placed returns? What I'm going to call a soft return. So a soft return is not a hard return because hard returns end our formatting. A soft return is holding the shift key and hitting return. So I'm going to place my cursor. I think I'm going to put it after the word more just to make sure that it returns here. It doesn't push a line up or text up. So I'm going to put my cursor after more. I'm going to hold shift and hit return. And I see a little different symbol. It's like a little bent corner. Then I'm going to come down to the next line and put my cursor before the word on. And I'm going to do a shift return there. So I'm kind of digging down or building down my text. And I'm getting rid of that widow or orphan that's at the bottom. Let's see, I'm going to put my cursor after the word calls, and I'm going to do another soft return. And I've created sort of a waterfall going down to that last line. That's a little easier on the eye than having that one word all by itself there. So soft returns are a good way to go. It continues your formatting because it's not a hard return. It continues your formatting. All the other formatting ends at that hard return that we see at the end of the word men. Let's click within the third paragraph that starts with Bob hails from Coogan. Placing our cursor in there is good enough. We don't have to select the entire paragraph. We can select to align to the right. That is our third button in the first row of alignment options. And that means if I drew a line on the right side, all the lines would be touching that right line and it would be ragged on the left. So it's not smooth, it's kind of broken up. That could use some soft returns as well, but we'll move on. Is there any question, or am I freezing up at all? I'm hearing some clicking and I'm not sure. Is everybody good? Everybody's good? Okay. All right. Let's go to that fourth paragraph. Bob still speaks fondly. That particular paragraph, we are going to use the justified options. There's only one good justified option. There's 3 options offered to you, but there's only one good one. And if you use the other 2, I will know. I will find you. I will slap you because it's not a good idea. Okay, let me show you why. So, with our cursor in the fourth paragraph, we're going to the second row of alignment options, and the very first button is justified with the last line aligned left. So all the buttons for justify have a difference in that last line because it's not a full line. Justified means it's adding space between the words or taking space out between the words to make it line up on both the left and the right side. So it's a straight line on both left and right side. Well, that kind of leaves us with this widow or orphan. I think it's an orphan when it's down there. It leaves us with that which we don't really like. But let's see what the other 2 options do, and we'll see if this is going to work for us. So the other 2 justified options here include justified but center the last line, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. And then there's force justified, which is truly awful. Okay, let's take a close-up look at that last line. Whew. So force justified means all the lines are full. They go all the way from the left all the way to the right. That last line, it looks like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. It's not readable. It's terrible. Do not use this option. Use the first justified with that last line to the left. We can go in and we can do a little bit of tracking or kerning. We're going to do tracking. Let's click 4 times to select a paragraph. Maybe we add some tracking to put another word down there with day. Let's try that. In order to do that, we have to click on the A for the character formatting options to come back up. I'm going to go to tracking. Now let's try adding some space first, and that's really not too bad. That's not that bad. We could, if we wanted to, try subtracting some space, but I think it's going to get a little difficult. Still not terrible, but much better than that force justified option. I think I like adding the 10 for tracking and getting another word down there with day. That doesn't look half bad. Okay, so justifying adds space or takes it away to try to align things on both sides of the paragraph. All right, what is next here? I gotta go back to my paragraph formatting options. There is a towards the spine and away from the spine option. The lesson in your book, lesson 2, I think, may have even had you start using that with master pages. It basically means if you put it on the left side and say a line away from the spine, if you end up moving that text to the right-hand page, it will automatically push the text away from the spine on the right side as well. So that's something else you can use. We're just not going to futz with it right now. All right, so I'm going to go to paragraph number 5. He adds that Tyler asked for nothing, blah, blah. We're going to look at some indent options here. So I've got left indent is my first indent option. Left indent pushes everything in from the left. So the entire paragraph is moving over. Okay, so maybe you want to do this when you want to bring attention to some text that maybe is not it's coming from an excerpt from another story or another letter or something, and you want to draw some attention to that. But what I would do if I'm going to do that, pushing it in from the left, I'm also going to push it in the same amount from the right. So it really does look purposely done. This is separate, this is different, this is special, so it gets a different treatment. So left indent and right indent are next to each other side by side in the control panel. In the paragraph formatting options, it affects the whole paragraph. I'm going to click down to paragraph number 6. We caught up with Bob for the first line indent. First line indent, it's not going to show up unless we get rid of the tab that's in front of the word we. So I'm going to put my cursor in front of the word we. I'm going to hit backspace or delete and get rid of that tab. And now I can apply the first line indent, first line left indent. It can look just like a tab. 9, maybe 12 points. Those are good numbers to use for an indent. We can do tabs. Tabs are great. We can set the tab where we want it to go. We don't have to keep hitting the tab button 47 times to get something to go to the right. We just tell the tab to go to the right. It's that easy in InDesign. But there are times when we need first line indent, and a good example of when you might want to use an indent rather than a tab is when you have text wrap applied to an object. When you put that object next to text that has a tab on it, the tab gets thrown off of where it was set. So we set it at 24 points, and now all of a sudden the text is starting at 48 points on the column measurement. That tab doesn't know what to do. An indent starts where the text starts. So if that text wrap object came into the vicinity of a paragraph that has a left line indent, or first line indent, excuse me, it starts measuring that indent from where the type starts, from the edge of the wrap object. So that's one time that you would want a first line indent instead of a tab. And I can make an argument for that in a number of cases, but it is good to know the difference between them. Okay. The last line indent, I'm not really used this much. In this particular paragraph, it's come on. It keeps pushing over because I'm going to zoom out. How's that? That would help. Okay. So if I push that last line indent from the right, it's pushing in from the right, and actuality is not going to do anything here because there's nowhere for it to go. There's nothing else it can do. There's no space left to work with. So putting it back at 0, if you can, maybe if you use the force justified and you want that last line to look a little better, you could do a last line indent from the right to push that bottom line over a little bit, look more normal. But just don't use that feature and you won't have that problem. Okay.